All right, let's bring in SEC Michael Bratton, that SEC podcast friend of FANRUN, friend of Talk Sports. Mike, always good to talk to you. How are you, brother?
Hey, doing great, John. Thanks for inviting me, and always like to return a favor. You're kind enough to join our show during the middle of the Nico madness, so hopefully that's the last time we mention that guy's name on this program.
Yeah. And one time I came on and I was trying to sell you on Gerard Mayo as the coach of the Vols, and I got to say, my logic I still feel like was good, and he did end up getting that NFL job, but boy, was he not good at coaching football. So I don't like to always admit when I'm wrong, but I got to take the L there on Gerard Mayo as a head coach. It does not seem like you'd have been able to run a college football program.
Well, yeah, but who knows, man? I mean, you insert Dion in the NFL, I bet he would fail spectacularly as well. There've been many, Pete Carroll, he didn't do too well in the NFL. I know he rebounded, but then he built nearly a dynasty in Southern Cal. So we probably haven't heard the end of Gerard Mayo.
There you go. That's a true friend. Thank you for not kicking me while I was down. You took my negative and you gave me a little hope. So I appreciate it. It's the middle of June. It's kind of like the fake shadow from the groundhog where you feel like spring is coming, but you got to wait and you get more winter because it feels like football's close. But as far as I'm concerned, we're still a long ways away. But I know you eat, sleep, and breathe this kind of year round. How are you feeling here a couple months before the season? What goes into your process right now with that SEC podcast and getting ready for the season?
Yeah, so right now we're doing our fall camp preview series where we dedicate an hour to each football team, and that's really how we get through the summer because that's 16 shows right there. Heading into SEC Media Days, we're pretty excited about that. And then this is not breaking news or anything. I'm sure your listeners probably saw it last football season, but there was a report. There's a SEC series coming out on Netflix.
Yeah,
and that's going to be dropping at the end of July, early August. That we're going to be featured prominently on. They flew me out to Charlotte, interviewed me for that. So unless I was just an awful interview, which is there's a chance that is true, I should be in that unless they cut me completely out.
Let's go. Do they take Shane out there too? Did cousin Shane get in, or is it just you?
They reached out, and man, I said Shane's dying to do it. He'd love to do it. They said, come on down, Mike. Who the hell is Shane? No, they didn't go quite that far, but maybe next year. They told me if this is a hit, they're going to do this annually. So just me on this one, but I think they're going to feature the podcast, which obviously Shane is the star of. If it was my decision, Shane or me, I would have went with Shane, but I'm his biggest fan.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the documentary. I'm looking forward to seeing, or not the documentary, but the docuseries, the TV show. I'm kind of interested to see how they handle it. Like how, is it going to be more of the hard knocks lane? Is it going to be a drive to survive type of feeling? Is it going to be, just straight game footage and with minimal behind the scenes stuff? I'm interested to see what they do there. Do you have any insight on that from your interviews? Like what kind of questions they asked you and what was kind of the look behind the scenes?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be very similar to that. And you nailed it there with the Drive to Survive, the F1 show on Netflix. This is the same production company. They were embedded with most of the SEC teams all last season. So yeah, this should be really behind the scenes look. And I won't share all the stuff they told me, but they went down the checklist of which coaches they hate, which coaches they love, which ones gave them exactly what they wanted. And there was a few in the SEC that apparently dog cussed them many times. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a really good show just based on what I know.
Would have been pretty funny had the cameras been rolling around the Tennessee facilities over the last week or two with the whole Grant Ferking on 3 straw man scandal. Tennessee being implemented in it as having him on payroll, just seeing all that kind of play out behind the scenes. But we just got a pretty good but kind of boring 10-2 playoff season here last year in Knoxville, and then all the drama happened in the offseason. The drama happened, pretty much picked up in late March, early April, and kind of hasn't slowed down since then.
Yeah, I mean, even when things are going great in Knoxville, we always find a way to get some drama out there, right? So, yeah, that Grant Ferking thing, that was pretty wild. He's He's been on our show, and I know he's been all over Paul Feinbaum, and what a revelation that was. But yeah, I mean, things were great. I thought Tennessee was. I mean, I still think you can argue they're on the rise, but man, they may be the last victim of the spring transfer portal. They're probably going to do away with that, thanks in large part to old Nico.
You know, we've been on the wrong side of a couple of things like that in Knoxville. I don't know if you remember, 2010 LSU. We're on the wrong side of like the hey. When the offense subs, the defense gets a chance. They, come stand over the ball and stop that. That Tennessee didn't get the benefit of the doubt there and ended up with 14 men on the field, and it cost them a win. The Music City Bowl in 2012, the North Carolina false start. There was no 10-second runoff, so they get time to kick a field goal. They changed that rule. Tennessee goes to Ohio State as the 8th-ranked team in the country. Now, moving forward, that would have gotten a home game in the playoff versus going on the road. So they're going to change that rule. It seems like Tennessee, probably with Zakai Ziegler, he gets denied his 5th year. And then next year, all the 5th-year guys will get to come back. So it does feel like Tennessee is always just a little bit early to the party and gets penalized for it. But I'm interested in what you said, Mike. You said you could argue that Tennessee is on the rise. This is what we need. We need the positivity of you convincing me and this audience that Tennessee is on the rise.
Yeah, certainly. And again, I've been victim to this as well, where I'm like, okay, Tennessee, I don't know. In my current SEC power rankings that I put out, update them obviously every week during the season. I just kind of do it randomly during the off season, like when the season's over, after spring, after portals, things of that nature. I think I have Tennessee like number 10. Now, does that mean Tennessee's going to finish 10th in the SEC? Now, here's the beauty of power rankings, John. No, it does not, because a lot of the teams ahead of them, they're not facing, or they're getting them at home, and potentially they could beat those teams. So, again, I'm right there with you with some negativity, but then we can spin it positively as well. How about this stat, John? I bet you and your audience may be unfamiliar with this.
Okay, give it to me. Let's go. Heat me up. Let's go. Fire me up, because I won't say I'm spewing negativity or nothing, but I will say that right now, June 20th, I'm maybe not as high or excited for the season, but I'm interested in this stat. Let's see if you can do it. Let's go.
Okay, so any coach that you talk to will tell you the portal is fine for plugging holes, but portal is not how you build your team, right? You still got to build your team through high school recruiting.
Take notes, Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, and I think they're in for a huge fall this year, Ole Miss. And again, huge, maybe, they're used to winning 10 games. They're not going to touch 10 games this year. But you still got to build your team through high school recruiting, I think. And I think the good teams have proven that even in this portal era, you got to be built through high school recruiting. Who's number 1 in the SEC and build in their rosters constructed through high school? Right now, it's Texas. Number 2, Georgia. What do they have in common? I know they have a wealth of talent, but those are conceivably the 2 picks to win the SEC. Well, how about number 3? I think it would surprise a lot of people, is Tennessee.
There we go. Okay. When you told me 1, I was going to say, wait, we're number 1? And then you're like, no, okay. And then number 2, no, Texas. But I was like, okay, Texas, Georgia, big-time recruiters. Okay, that makes sense. Number 3, though, I got to say, Mike, does get me pretty fired up.
Right. And again, it's one thing to bring guys back, but I think you get an added bonus with this coaching staff, with continuity, with the development that they have proven where they can take guys and make them into high-caliber SEC athletes and get a lot of them to the NFL. That's got to give fans, I think, a lot of optimism that there's a lot of names that I know diehards already know, but I think the casual Tennessee or even the casual SEC fan has no idea who some of these guys are going to play for Tennessee next year, but they've been in the system. It's their time to shine. They've got the coaches that put them in the right position to make the plays. And, every Tennessee fan, I think, would know the schedule. Schedule lines up really well. I know there's some tough games there, but Tennessee is essentially going to be favored in probably 9 to 10 football games this fall out of 12.
Okay, I like where we're going. You're getting me warmed up. Okay, let's keep going. Let's dive in a little bit. So Tennessee, and you're right about that, because that was something we noticed here in Knoxville this year. Like, Tennessee seemed as if they were focusing, I don't want to say solely, but it did seem like most of their efforts, both in attention and in NIL, was high school and keeping the players on campus. You know, like, I know it's kind of funny to see, seeing how you lost your starting quarterback, but like, it did seem like the efforts were like, hey, it's easier to keep a client versus going out and getting a new one. Like, hey, let's keep these players here and let them develop versus go out and try to scout, convince, pay, and bring somebody new in. It did seem like that was a real culture shift for Josh Heupel in Tennessee this past year. So that high school stat does kind of check out whenever you actually think about it. Again, it's funny whenever you consider that Tennessee lost their starting quarterback. So like, they are having to go out and kind of replace him. And I do feel like, from a national, regional perspective, I think that has led to a lot of negativity, or at least people expecting a downturn for Tennessee for that reason, because of the quarterback position. Do you buy the Nico Iamaleava loss as detrimental to Tennessee's season? Is it going to cost them a couple games? Does it cost them to take a step back? How do you view that right now here as we sit in June?
Yeah, honestly, I do. I call it like I see it. I think it is a downgrade, and I think it likely will cost Tennessee a win, maybe two. But you could just as well say, that guy was not worth the hype. I mean, I think that's true as well. But I was expecting him in year two in the system, year two as a starting quarterback, I guess I should say, to take a big jump. Now, can Joey Aguilar or one of the young players come in and be serviceable? I mean, every quarterback Josh Heupel has seemingly ever had in college football has put up some pretty decent numbers. So I don't think they're going to be like anemic on the offensive side of the football by any means, but you can't substitute that experience that walked out the door. Now, again, you want to be positive. I don't mean, again, I call it like I see it, right? Nico and Joe Milton struggled mightily to throw the deep ball, accuracy wise. And I think every Tennessee fan would admit that. Well, what's literally the strength of Joey Aguilar's game is downfield accuracy, throwing the football. So yeah, that is something that has clearly been missing from the Tennessee offense the last 2 years. And there's a lot of people that think, maybe Josh Heupel's been figured out. Oh, by the way, they're a rushing juggernaut and they reached college football playoffs. So that's a hell of a way to say he's been figured out. But if they can get that back, the downfield passing, I think that potentially unlocks something that was missing from this offense the last couple of years. And that's not to say, again, is Joey Aguilar better, more talented than Nico? I think you're crazy if you say that. But again, I think there's parts of this offense that could be unlocked that were not there.
You've mentioned the system, a couple years in the system. You've mentioned that a couple times. You just talked about Josh Heupel being figured out potentially. Do you still buy into the Josh Heupel system and offensive philosophy of his passing game? I know you talked about them being a rushing juggernaut. I personally think the rushing stats are a little misleading. It's almost like a compiling statistic of sorts. That the efficiency wasn't always there in the running game, but sometimes they would just use it to wear you down and win, late in the games. And Nico, I think himself, was better as the game went on in most of the games last year. The 3-4 straight games of being shut out in the first half, and then you still found a way to win and score in a couple of those. But do you still buy the Josh Heupel system?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Now, and I also give him credit for adjusting, because we talked about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss briefly. That guy has failed to adjust. Now, I know they're having a lot of success, but they didn't have the offensive line. They didn't have the running back. And again, I don't know how many of your listeners avidly watch Ole Miss, but what killed them in a lot of key games, all the games they lost, Kentucky, Florida was a bad one, and LSU, was short yardage situations. They couldn't run the ball on 3rd and short, 4th and short. Rarely they literally put a defensive lineman as their running back last year because they didn't have an option. So, John, let me ask you again. We're not getting paid $10 million to coach football. If you don't have a damn running back that can pick up short yardage, and you are resorting to running out a defensive lineman to run the football, And by the way, you've got arguably the best defense in the SEC. But people kind of miss that fact. But Ole Miss arguably had the best defense in the SEC last year. How often would you be going for it on 3rd and 4th when you're in field goal range? I don't know about you. I'm kicking field goals because
the Florida game in particular, you're right. Like they dominated that game in between, when you look at the box score, you look at the stats, the only thing they failed to do is just pick up those 4th downs like you're talking about. And then late in the game, of course, Jackson Dart completely melted down and cost them that game. But LSU, you're right. You're right about Heupel. Go ahead.
They never trailed in the LSU game. Never. They trailed until the final play when LSU won it. But right. Same deal. 3rd and short, 4th and short. They went for it. They did. If they kicked 2 field goals, they would have won that game easily.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate Heupel's ability to run the ball. And you talked about evolution. I think just in that position, he's evolved, because if you go back and watch the 2021 season, Tennessee struggled in short yardage positions. They struggled, and it cost them a couple games. It cost them the Pittsburgh game. It cost them the Music City Bowl against Purdue. Like, they could not convert in short yardage positions. And it does feel like Tennessee, at least last year, seemed to be much better at that. You could argue even in 23 that it kind of cost them the Alabama game. Joe Milton getting stuffed a couple times in short yardage positions. So hopefully that is something that was not Dylan Sampson dependent for Josh Heupel, and they can kind of keep the run game, keep the short yardage, and then hopefully at least bring back maybe 85% of the Hendon Hooker 22 passing offense. I don't think we're ever going to get back to those numbers and those successful deep shots, because I think Hendon Hooker was really good at throwing the deep ball, and I think Jalen Hyatt was, of course, a generational deep threat talent. So I don't think you're going to be able to replicate that fully, but can we get back to like 80% of it maybe, while also being able to run the ball and play better defense? Because the Josh Heupel, Tim Banks relationship statistically has just gotten better every year, of his tenure. And I don't know how they could really improve in 25 versus what they had of 24. But as long as they don't have a huge step back, I personally don't see a reason this team can't still be in position to head to Gainesville with a chance to be in the playoff mix at that point. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, absolutely. But here's one aspect that we haven't hit on that, again, you and your audience could be well aware, but they've got to clean up their annual road game debacle. Like, we can't have any of that. And, oh, by the way, maybe 2 of the top 3 most difficult games you got this year, Alabama, that's my pick to win the SEC this year, and Florida, who I think will be really good. But I thought that about teams before, and I could see Billy Napier being fired by the time that game rolls around as well. But to go in the swamp, to go into Tuscaloosa, it's going to take a lot to get a win in either one of those. But really, when I say, a debacle, what is it? I'm trying to think of the other. Would it be Kentucky and Vanderbilt? Those are games you have to win.
Not Vandy. Vandy will be in Knoxville this year. Kentucky and Mississippi State.
There you go. Mississippi State. Yep. That's a tricky one, where I think they're light years behind where Tennessee is. Hell, I thought Arkansas was last year too, though. You know what I mean? So you got to avoid that annual letdown on the road.
Well, it's funny to me because I think the Florida game might be that position. I know you said you're high on them, and I understand there's some talent there, but also, like, I think in 2024, things would have been a lot worse, and the vibes heading into this year would have been a lot worse had there not been the freshman 5-star to break the glass in case of emergency. And look, I don't even think DJ Lagway was that good when he actually played. But of course, you see the promise, you see the potential. But when you actually look at his numbers, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, a lot of that kind of beating up on, was it Georgia Southern maybe that he really beat up on early in the season? But they're able to bring Lagway in, get some good vibes because of the excitement, because of the promise. They're able to pull a couple upsets down the stretch. But I look at in 2025, because the schedule's still going to be really tough for them early on in the season. If they stumble and they're 6-4 and they don't have the 5-star freshman that they can put in for a shot in the arm, I wonder how that season progresses if they take early losses, because their early season schedule is really tough. And
Yeah.
look, no shots at the Florida fans. I'm not trying to start a beef right now, but they're a little bit fair weather. I think we could agree. Like they're a little bit of front runners, and if they're not competing for championships down there, I do wonder what the vibe would be if Tennessee came to town and Florida's 6-4. So,
Right.
like, to me, strangely enough, the trap game could be the game that you're looking at right now, as, like you said, the third toughest game on your schedule behind the road trip to Alabama and home against Georgia.
No, I think all that's fair. Now, my cousin Shane, co-host, he thinks Florida's nothing but a damn house of cards that people have bought into because, again,
I kind of agree with Shane. I kind of agree with Shane right now. You know, I'm going to stop short of calling him a house of cards, but like, you know, I don't know why, and maybe you could tell me, you're the SEC expert here, but like, why are we so confident that DJ Lagway is going to progress under Billy Napier? Like, has Billy Napier developed, you know, a quarterback with that much talent? Have we seen him successfully do that? Because it didn't feel like he was really running a high-flying offense, you know, at his last stop. It doesn't feel like he's really had experience kind of letting a guy flourish in that system. Am I right or wrong there?
I would disagree with that, but
Okay.
I think, you know, I understand the criticism. Again, Anthony Richardson, was he always the best player? No, and I don't watch a ton of NFL, but what I understand in the NFL, he's been a travesty, but he got him there, right? His job is to get him there. And then the other guy, Graham Mertz, who I thought that, I mean, that was comical to me for them to bring Graham Mertz down there to save him. And not like he was the best quarterback in the SEC, but I thought he was very serviceable. And then, yeah, again, there are ways to look at DJ Lagway and say his numbers are not that good, but the one that stands out that is very, very important in today's college football is yards per pass attempt. And he was at over 10, that's astronomically good. That's like what Hendon Hooker did in 22 was around 10 yards per pass attempt. That's where DJ Lagway was at last year. So what can he do in year two? You know, he's got to cut down on the interceptions that you highlighted, but I don't know. I mean, but between him and Sellers, I think those are the two best quarterbacks in the conference next year.
Yeah, it was Samford, not Georgia Southern. But like we talk about the yards per pass per attempt, I do think, Mike, that 25 attempts for 456 yards against Samford does kind of help inflate that just a little bit. You know what I mean? Like if you take those 456 yards on 25 attempts and 18 completions, I think that brings him down to a more realistic number. But you know,
that's fair.
He was a 5-star for a reason. So, like, you know, and you are right about Graham Mertz. I do think Graham Mertz, you know, Tennessee fans, I think if we're honest with ourselves, Tennessee maybe loses that game last year against Florida if Mertz doesn't get hurt, because Mertz was slicing and dicing Tennessee, and Lagway came in and kind of struggled. Now, of course, he did tie the game on the, you know, with a last-minute drive there, and I still don't really understand why Billy Napier didn't go for two, but you know, Lagway wasn't ready quite for that moment. He had one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen at the end of the third quarter to set Tennessee up to take the lead. But, yeah, Mertz did progress under him. You know, I don't think to necessarily a 5-star level that's going to elevate the team like people are talking about with Lagway, but he did play good football. So I'll say that your point there is taken.
And I agree 100% with you, everything about Billy Napier. I mean, it's kind of hard to pump up Florida while at the same time, I believe, and I call it like I see it. He's one of the worst game day coaches in the conference. So, you know, he's lucky he got DJ Lagway. I'll just put it that way, because I don't think he deserves to be Florida's head coach. And quite frankly, again, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's fired here in a couple months.
Long Island University is who they start their season with. Then Alex Golesh in South Florida, like, you know, that'll be pesky, but like Florida should handle that game. At LSU, at Miami, Texas, at A&M, like that's a really tough start to the schedule. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the idea of the front running Florida. Like, what happens if they take a couple losses there and they still have Georgia and at Ole Miss before they even play Tennessee? Because, you know, Tennessee traditionally has always played Florida. Even in Florida's bad seasons, they've played Florida before Florida has fallen apart, right? Like, Florida is always pretty good in September, and even the years where they're terrible, they still beat Tennessee in September and then, you know, kind of fall apart. This year, the schedule being reversed, I think, could possibly help Tennessee, or in Josh Heupel's case, when you look at his road woes, be the ultimate trap game that Josh Heupel could not afford to lose if he goes in there with Tennessee, maybe sitting at 8-2, just needing to beat Florida and Vandy to get in the playoffs. So that would be a fascinating wrinkle there. A couple more questions on the way out, Mike. I appreciate the time you have given us today. Just real quick, as we sit here, middle of June, your record for Tennessee, as you're feeling right now, where do you have Tennessee? 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. Where are you at?
I'd probably put it at 8-4, but I'm trending more and more towards 9-3. So I think they can get there. What we just did for Florida, we probably don't have time to sit here and do it for Oklahoma, but that's another one. I think Oklahoma could be really good. I think Brent Venables could be fired by the time that game rolls around. So that's another kind of like a toss-up type game that could really dictate how well Tennessee does this year.
No, the media, you guys like you, Mike, the national voices that are putting the pressure and driving the narrative. The Oklahoma love has made it to where if Venables does not actually go out and win 9 or 10 games, yeah, he's out of there because it does seem like the roster turnover that they had this offseason, the improvements they've made to the program, they're kind of out of excuses when it comes to Venables in Oklahoma. Like, he does have to produce. Tennessee gets Oklahoma at home November 1st. That could be a huge game, or it could be a game, like you said, where Venables is either gone or fighting for his life. That could be a do-or-die game for him, so it'll be interesting how that shakes out. Tennessee 8-4. All right. One more thing on the way out. I've been asking people this week. Me and Cody discussed it on Talk Sports every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. As you sit here right now, how many teams do you have in the inner circle for a chance to win an actual championship, a national championship in 2025? How many teams do you think could realistically do it?
Well, I'm always trying to be as honest as I can. I don't intimately follow the teams outside the SEC.
Okay. Well, how many SEC teams then do you have that can realistically win the championship?
Yeah. Realistically, Texas, certainly, Georgia, Alabama. I would throw them into the mix. And that, in my mind, may be the only ones that are realistic. Now,
okay.
I think there are others that could make the Final Four and make like a dream scenario type run, maybe LSU. I'm just not a huge believer in Brian Kelly's big game coaching ability. We talked about Florida a little bit, but I even that I think is a huge stretch. Oklahoma, again, I think that's a stretch, but they're in that conversation. But I think one to keep your eye on that, and it's no fault of the current administration, but we just can simply not hype this team up every offseason because it gets tiresome. But Texas A&M has got a lot of pieces. And yeah, I know I call them Texas 8-4 because good gosh, they go 8-4 every year, right? But that's got little to do with Mike Elko. They were 7-1 last year. 8-4 is a better debut. I know not every situation is the same, obviously, but that's a better SEC debut than I think literally almost every coach in the conference. Better than Josh Heupel, better than Lane Kiffin. Sarkisian struggled at Texas year one. Even Kirby and Nick Saban. Again, I know different situations, but an 8-4 debut is not awful. They have talent, and if they can run the ball and stop the run like they were doing when they were 7-1 last season, I think Texas A&M's got an outside shot to make a big time run.
60 seconds or less, because I don't want to hear more than 60 seconds, Mike. But I am curious why you're so high on Alabama.
Yeah, why? I think it's ultimate boom or bust. They have as much talent as literally anybody in the country. And all I heard last offseason was Caleb DeBoer, what a coaching genius he is. He looked completely outclassed, I thought, last year in terms of SEC coaches. So, hey, this is year. If he doesn't get to the playoff, I would fire him. So I either have him fired or I have him, maybe winning it all.
Over under 3.5 coaches fired in the SEC this year. Because you make a good point. Like Napier could be gone, Stoops could be gone, Venables could be gone, DeBoer could be gone. Just off the top of your head, Hugh Freeze. Like, it does feel like this is a make or break year for a lot of those guys.
Yeah, here's the deal, though, John. I mean, I think a lot of these guys should be fired, and I've been saying it for a while. But we're getting into territory. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm sure the fans are. But with like revenue share and money's hard to come up with, can you afford? Mark Stoops should not be employed. To make him go away is like $45 million. Brent Venables, to make him go away is $40 million. Can these schools afford it? Some of them will be able to, some won't. So I'll go under on your number. But the one, and I always call for this guy to be fired. I don't think he deserves it. If you don't trust him to run his Twitter account, why you trust him to run the football program is Hugh Freeze. And they wisely structured his buyout so it's very low. I think if I don't know if you heard this, John, a couple of weeks ago. He said, yeah, the expectation is make a bowl game. He's in year 3 at Auburn. They used to fire coaches for not winning 10 games down there. If they go 6-6 or worse, I'd fire him.
I just complimented you for how you helped set the narrative, nationally and in the SEC. Hugh Freeze trying to set the narrative for himself. Like, hey, 6-6 is accomplishment, guys. Like, if I can get to a bowl game, like, hey, we should be happy. I will push back on this, though, Mike. Once I understand the revenue sharing, we don't know how it's going to be. We don't know what it's going to affect. But once we were firing coaches in the damn pandemic, whenever fans weren't even going to games, once like South Carolina was still finding money to get rid of Will Muschamp, it made me realize they're going to find the money regardless. The money's coming regardless, because you say you might not be able to afford to fire these coaches. I think when the money's this big and now everything's changing, you can't afford to be bad. You can't afford to keep some of these coaches. You got to look like you're moving forward and trying to get better, or else you're going to get left behind. Yeah,
I mean that's fair, but I don't know. I don't know if Kentucky can do it. I know Oklahoma could. So I mean, I think it's a institution by institution basis. Yeah. I really do.
No, I think that's fair, because Kentucky's going to have to decide, like, hey, are we even going to pretend to care about football, or are we just going to go on basketball? Like, I do think that is completely fair. SEC Mike, I appreciate your time, my brother. That SEC podcast, if you're not listening to it, go subscribe, go like, tell Cousin Shane I said what's up. Michael W. Bratton on X/Twitter. Give him a follow if you're not already. Mike, I appreciate you.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for having me.